Hey everybody, cheers. Um, so forgive the quality here. I don't know how this is going to work. Um, I've kind of, I'm using my laptop, which is just proven in the past not to be that great as far as video quality. I'm hoping that the sound is okay. I seem to be registering pretty well here. I've lowered the bandwidth a little bit, so it's not that this camera does HD, but I lowered it a bit. Hopefully that'll stop any sort of pausing or delays or anything like that. I do have the chat open, so if you do show up and you want to ask questions, please feel free. Um, so a little bit of backstory about this. About, I don't know, it must have been at least a year ago, maybe even more, just on one of the videos talking about Underground Comix, there was a comment in the messages after the fact of somebody asking just about multiple printings with a chunk of these books. Obviously, it depends on the books. Things like Freak Brothers, things like Zap Comics, they've had multiple printings. So the question was, how do you discern one printing from the next? So at this point now, I've got quite a stack of books that I have multiple printings for. One of the things that I'm trying to do when I do see them, and if they're cheap enough, I just buy them up, um, because I want to have kind of examples of all the printings, just because that's how I am. It's been kind of nice, especially talking to Dan Fogel. Uh, Actually, before I get into that, let's just talk about the great resources that are out there first of all. So the first thing is Comics Joint was the first place that I discovered myself as far as a great resource for not only the underground comics that exist, not only the history of those underground comics, the how many printings there were, how many copies were in each of those printings, what are some of the distinguishing marks on those printings so you can figure out which printing you do have. It wasn't a complete resource because I do notice sometimes even now when I'm checking on things, some information on Comics Joint isn't as up to date as the stuff that is in this. And this brings me to my second printing. The camera on this one is crazy. It zooms in so tight. This is a fantastic resource for all that information. Now, when it comes to this versus Comics Joint, is what I was just going to say, that because this is more up to date, a lot of there's information here that is different than you'll find on Comics Joint. I know that they work together; they're partners in crime as far as the history of underground comics goes, as far as like digging up information on them. I cannot stress enough how great this book is. Now, when I first picked up the book, if anybody, for those of you that have followed the channel for a long time, you know that I did have some issues with the book. Those issues still stand, but the thing that really stands out for me now is what I keep going back to after all this time. What I continually go back to is not so much about the prices. It's really about how many printings of that comic were there. How can I tell them apart? Which printings do I have? Which printings am I still needing? Which printings do I want? You know, um, that's a really great part of the information of this book that I find I use the most for. I do use it to get kind of a rough price, but like any price guide, and as you all know, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, when it comes to price guides in comics, it's kind of bullshit. This one is, I find that this one is a lot more realistic than the Overstreet price guide. Sure, the Overstreet price guide, again, it's supposed to give you a range. I find the range in the Overstreet price guide a little silly. I find the range in this price guide very realistic for the most part. There's obviously a few things that it just comes down to what deals you find compared to what people are selling them for. I have seen people that have gone straight by the book on this. But again, if you followed the channel, you know that I've managed to find some incredible deals on books. So that alone is, if you are going to be seriously collecting undergrounds, this is a fantastic resource to have just for that. The other good thing about Fogel is that he's very approachable. I still talk to him on occasion when I have questions, and it's mostly when I have questions about some information in here. And he's very receptive to just kind of responding, which has been fantastic. There's been a couple of things where I found a comic where the printing information that's in this book isn't registered on that particular comic. So there's been some confusion on my part, and he's been really great and kind of just talking to me about it. And, you know, yeah, it's fantastic. It's really, really great for that. So the different printings, it basically, there's a couple of main areas where you're going to find huge differences. They go from things that are completely obvious, like the price on the cover, how much it was selling for at the time. It's a huge one. You see that a lot. You see sometimes different colors, different, not necessarily different images, but something changed to the cover itself that really jumps out at you. So you get the ranges from that to information that's on the inside front cover, information that's on the back cover, to things that are almost undiscernible without the proper equipment to say. I think there was an issue of Zap Comics, a couple of issues of Zap Comics, where you literally have to have a set of digital calipers to measure the thickness of the paper stock that's used for the front cover to find out if you have a first printing or a second printing or a third printing. So stuff that's really not obvious and stuff that you're just not going to be able to tell, to even things like Inner City Romance, where it's known that there was multiple printings, but everything about those printings was exactly the same, that it's nearly impossible to tell which printing, or not nearly impossible, they say in the price guide, it's impossible to tell which printing you have. There's no distinguishing factor that they know of yet to tell each printing apart. And I guess that says something about collector's market and what you're putting out there. Obviously, with things like Zap Comics, the length of time that it's going to be out, the length of the amount of times it's going to be reprinted, it's pretty easy just to change the cover price, keep everything else exactly the same, just because, you know, you're the first printing and the seventh printing that happened 15 years later. Obviously, you're not going to be charging 50 cents for a book. So that's something that you know you're going to keep reprinting. There's no point in doing anything else. So with that, we'll just look at, I pulled out all the books that I have multiple printings of, and we'll just talk about what sets them apart from each other. And again, like I said, some are going to be really obvious and some are just not. So right off the bat, we're going to start with one that's completely obvious. So here we have All Atomic Comics, and something that I found quite a bit is stickers over the price tag, over the price. Now, for the most part, I've been able to take the stickers off so I can see the price underneath. I don't remember if I've tried with this one and it just didn't go, because there have been a couple where you can tell right away if it's going to come off or not. And if it's just not, I don't bother. I just leave it, put it back to where it was, and I don't bother. The last thing I want is to damage the books. So All Atomic Comics, You can see that there. So like I said, this is the first printing of this book, versus this, which is the fourth printing of the same book. So things like the cover price, but more importantly, the entire color difference in the two printings. And I wish I could tell you the amount of printings. I don't want to keep going back to the price guide every single time for each book. Maybe I should have printed things off so we could talk about it, but that would be preparing for a video, which we're not about here. So again, something like that, really obvious. All Atomic Comics, first printing, fourth printing. And an example, again, another kind of basic example. This is the first printing of Anarchy Comics, and I believe it's issue number 1. And you can see here a $1 price tag on it, clear as day. And this is the second printing. A couple of things on this one. So what I've done, what I do is when I get the books, I like to put where I got the book, when I got the book, how much I paid for it. If there's any little notes, I like to put little notes up there. And I'll show you later on some of the stuff from Comics Joint. I'll show you when I come across one. We'll talk about it again. So the note on the back of this one says that this is actually issue number 1. The second printing had the mistake of number 2 on the cover. So you can see right here, along with a different price, they had a printing error that says that this was issue number 2, and it's actually issue number 1. So right there is very easy to tell which you have. Now, of course, the other thing that comes with these multiple printings is somehow keeping this information with you, which I just can't do. So more often than not, like I said, if I find a book that's cheap enough and I'm not sure if I have that printing, or if I need to take it back home to open it up to really look and check with the book, I'll just pick it up. I now have a nice stack of Undergrounds for sale and for trade, which is maybe something that we'll talk about later too, briefly. Because if anybody is into trading, completely into trading some Undergrounds, and I'll probably do a separate video where I just show off the books that I have. And if anybody's interested, feel free to give me a shout and we can trade, or if you want to buy some of them, we can easily work out a good deal. So this is Cocaine Comics, issue number 1. And over here you can see 75-cent price tag. So this is a first printing as well, and a third printing with a $1.50 price tag. I sure hope you can see that, because I can't really make that out looking at the screen myself. So there you go. So again, same cover, slight color variation with the printing. There's a slight layout difference. The books are the same height, but the image has just been cropped differently. You can see where the signature is. Normally, there's not many notes about that. We'll come across one later on where the size of the book is actually one of the factors in figuring out which printing you have. So again, first printing and third printing. Now, a lot of the times, especially with these older printings, if you're seeing something with a 50-cent or a 75-cent price tag, chances are you're looking at a first printing. Obviously, that's not true across the board, but that's a really good one to keep a lookout for. If you see a 50-cent price tag on the book itself, chances are you've got a first or very early printing. 75 cents, same thing. Chances are you've got a really early printing. This next one, again, a fairly obvious one. Dope and Dan. Not sure what issue this is. I think it's first issue. So this is first printing, and again, a big old 50-cent price tag on it versus the second printing with a big old $1 price tag. Other than that, some of the coloring, his face is a little darker in here, a little redder versus this, so a little bit of correction being done on this one. That's that first stack. So here we get into the wonderful world of the fabulous furry Freak Brothers. Let's have a look in the book. Now this is one where printings were out of control. So you're looking at issue number 0. We have 6 different printings. Issue number 1, we have 22 different printings. Issue number 2, we have 19 different printings. Issue number 3, 14 printings. Issue number 4, 10. Issue number 5, 11. Issue number 6, 9. Issue number 7, 7. Issue number 8, 6. Issue number 9, 7. Issue number 10, 6. Issue number 11, 4. Issue number 12, 4. Issue number 13, only 3 printings. Maybe it goes without saying, but issue number 1, for example, the very first printing was 1971. Issue number 10, the very first issue was 1987. By that time, they know, they have a better idea anyway of how the book is going to do and how many printings they need to make. Now, the one thing that would be nice with a future underground price guide would be how many, if that information is known, how many books were printed for each of the printings. 10,000, 20,000, whatever the numbers were. That might be some nice information to have in here as well too. There's more than enough room with that layout there. You can see there's enough room to put 10,000 books. So what else was I going to say about this? So we'll look at, what do we have here? We have Freak Brothers number 2. So this one is a 9th printing. 7th, 8th, 9th. Freak Brothers number 2, 9th printing with a $1 price tag. Sorry, I was just looking to see if there was any other information in the book. And then a 10th printing with a $1.25 price tag. Also a little difference you can see up in the corner there, which doesn't get a mention in the book actually. But when you have something as obvious as the price tag, there's not much point. And then finally for this one, this was the first one that I ever had. It's a UK priced version. My first discovery with Freak Brothers and early on discovery of Underground Comix period was on a trip to the UK to visit family. I bought a number of Freak Brothers books from them, or a couple of Freak Brothers books overseas, along with some other stuff, I think stuff that I no longer have. But this was a book that I've had since early teens that I bought off the rack, so that's kind of cool. The UK, I guess that's another point to make as well, that the price variants, the UK variants, aren't mentioned in the price guide, which I don't think is a bad thing. because once you start getting to that, that's a lot of extra information here. Maybe it's not bad for a future. I don't know if it's necessary though. The whole UK market of underground comics is something that's interesting to me as well. It would be great. I would love to see a book of just UK based undergrounds. This one kind of takes care of North America, but it would be nice to see something UK. And maybe if there was a book like that, I don't know the history of the UK undergrounds very well. If there's something like that, maybe in that book there could be the stuff like the Freak Brothers with the UK price tags. So issue number 3, again, that had 14 printings. Here I managed to score myself a first printing with a 50-cent price tag there. And again, I mean, looking at the price guide here, $12 US for a 2.0, $25 US for a 6.0, and $50 for a 9.2. This cost me $7.50 Canadian. I don't know what I'd grade it. It's 5.0-ish or something, you know what I mean? It's fairly rough, but again, it's the classic example of people that know how to move comics. You're just not going to move comics, especially when you're getting into books where there's so many printings. You're only going to get hardcore knuckleheads like myself who want to get every single printing. So there you go. So that's the first printing there. And then the 8th printing with a $2 price tag on it. And finally, a 12th printing with a, what is that, a $3.25 price tag plus a Canadian price underneath. But as you can see, nothing else has changed. The covers are still the same. Again, the only difference would be the printing quality between them. If you look at the tree, I don't know if it's coming out here, just the ink itself sticking a lot better. Issue number 4, where we have 10 different printings and a 3rd printing of a $1.25 price tag, and then a 5th printing of a $2 price tag. Again, same cover, price different. I'll pick up the pace a little bit here. Issue number 5, where we had 11 different printings. This is a $2 price tag, 5th printing according to the book. 6th printing with a $2 price tag, but an inclusion of a Canadian price as well. So that's it for those. The People's Comic. Put this away here. The People's Comic, a $1 price tag, 4th printing versus Adults Only, $2, a 5th printing right here. There you go. So that gets us through that. This is an interesting one that so I've been going through my comics, cleaning stuff up, putting stuff away, getting rid of some things, not very much. I'm kind of taking an overview of the books that I have. And as I was going through, just double checking to make sure that, you know, the books that I was selling, the undergrounds that I was selling, they're not different printings that I just didn't look closely at. And lo and behold, there was one like that. So this is Skull Comics, number 1, a 50-cent cover There we go, right there. Hopefully you can make that out. Now, this has an interesting story behind it. There's multiple things. So this might be the first printing, and this might be the second printing. Now, if you look at those two covers, you're not seeing anything different about them. So here's where things get a little difficult. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell. Maybe you could sort of tell. One of the factors with this book, and we'll read it straight from the price guide, Skull Comics. Number one. So there's sometimes you'll get a list with a little more detail. One of the other things that'll happen with multiple printings, it may have been from the first printing to the fifth printing, it may be published by a different company. So for example, it might have, one printing might be Rip-Off Press, the next printing might be Last Gasp, that sort of thing. J-Rocks, how the hell are you? So one of the things with this one that really had me looking was there's a couple of items. All three printings have a 50-cent price tag. The first printing has a heavier stock. It's 10.375 inches tall, bad alignment, and page 17, there's a word decadence that's obscured. The second printing, better alignment, page 17, decadence is still obscured. Third printing, the word decadence on page 17 is fixed and it's less glossy cover stock. So sometimes you're getting into some really difficult to determine factors, especially if you're going to buy books and it's, can I just look at the book? I need to see page 17 to see if the word decadence is obscured or not. So the reason I think that this one is a second printing and this one is a first printing is because you can't really tell on the video, but this one is a little bit taller. When you're sitting here side by side, it's a little taller than the other one. Both of them do have the word decadence obscured. The only real difference is the height of them. Obviously, I haven't sat there and measured them out exactly, but just comparing them one to the other. That'll be the next step, I guess, just kind of getting a measurement out. So you can get into some territory where it's just not easy to find. You're looking at a 50-cent cover. You know that it's an early printing, but in this case, every single printing has a 50-cent cover, so that's just not going to help you. So it almost becomes a gamble. And I think I've got another one of these in the box that I'm selling, which is a multiple of one of these printings. So yeah, that's when it does get a little difficult. But also, I think kind of what makes it fun. And a lot of the times I'm imagining that when they were printing these books, it might not have been at the forefront of their mind of like, we need to do a second printing. Let's make sure that we put something different on the cover or change something obvious so we can see, so we can make sure that the generation of collectors that are coming up that want these things are going to be able to tell which printing was which. It just wasn't on their mind. They probably didn't have the money to maybe make the changes. It was just easier to print it off and just get it out the door so they could sell it again, right? So here's an example, as I was saying earlier on, just some things that I do to my books as well. I check out the Comics Joint, and I haven't done it for all the books. I've done it for a large number of them, though. I really like the history attached to the Undergrounds. So I've printed off the information that they have on Comics Joint and just glued them to the back of the backing board, just so I have some reference. And it gives you the breakdown of Comics Joint. You can see right there. If you haven't seen the site itself, this is exactly what you're seeing when you're searching for a comic. You'll get an image of the comic at the top, and then you'll get all this information down below. Tells you the printing, tells you the year, gives you a little history and what's in the comic, what his impression is of the comic, and then it gives you a printing history down here. under historical footnotes. And then at the very final thing you'll get is comic creators, who was in the issue, what pages they did, how many pages they did. And here he does talk about the height difference and the decadence, and that they're all 50 cents. So they, in this case, the book versus Comics Joint, they're pretty much on par with each other. So that's one of the more unusual ones. This is another unusual one as well, and this is Skull Comics number 2, and it is a, where's the price down here? 50-cent cover price there. Skull Comics number 2, and Skull Comics number 2, a third printing, 50-cent price tag down there. So the difference with number 2 is information. So again, in the price guide itself, issue number 2 had 7 different printings. Now, the thing that changed for this one, and I'll show you right here, on the inside front cover and the back cover is where you're looking for your information this time. On the inside front cover, you can see the address there. And on the back cover, you can see the Shattuck Square address there as well. So in between printings, they moved shop, and they changed their contact information on the different printings. So here we have a P.O. box at the bottom as opposed to Shattuck Square. And again, on the inside front cover, same thing, a post office box. With that, there were some changes. The first printing had the Shattuck Square on the back cover and the inside front cover. The second printing had the Shattuck Square on the inside front cover, but the P.O. box on the back, as they were making the transition, I guess. And it just kind of changes from there. So again, without being able to see the books themselves, it's not always going to be easy to know which one you're picking up, because looking at the cover, you're just seeing the cover itself. Which there's no change. And then we get back into a little more obvious one. So this is Slow Death now. The series Slow Death. This is issue number 2. With a big, bold 50-cent price. And issue, that's a 4th printing start. And for the 5th print, a $1 price tag. Same cover. Easily identifiable though. And again, 4th printing at a 50-cent cover price. Let's see, number 2. So in this case, it only had 5 printings. The first 4 of them had 50-cent cover price. The final one had a $1. The 5th printing had the $1, and that was it. The differences with the ones that are 50 cents are in the skull itself. And an ad inside the book on page 34. So there you go with that one. Unfortunately, I don't have an example of that. Slow Death number 5. One of my favorite covers of all the Undergrounds. But from this series, it's easily my favorite. Number 5, 75 center, 2nd printing. Number 5, $1 price tag for a 3rd printing. Issue number 8, $1 cover, 1st printing. Issue number 8, $1 front cover, first printing. Again, this is another book where you're going inside the book to find out the difference. This one only had 2 printings. Printing stated on the inside front cover for the first printing. In the second printing, no printing stated whatsoever. So there you go. We'll probably fire through most of these here. So first printing of Women's Comics number 3, 50 cents. Second printing, 75 cents. A blatantly obvious one. Lucky enough to get myself a second printing of issue number 2 of Zap Comics, 50 cents. And then a 6th printing with a $2.95 price tag there. Really, really excited. So here's one of those examples, first or second printing. This is for Zap Comics number 3. Let's turn to the page. I think this was the one I was talking about earlier. XYZ, Zap Comics number 3. How many printings? So this had 9 printings. The first 4 were with the print mint, and the last 5 were with Last Gasp. So right away, that's the first thing you're looking for. And what else did it say? I thought this was the one. Yeah, so this is the one. So I have on this one, it's listed as a first or second printing because this is one where you're looking at the regular weight glossy cover stock versus heavy glossy or matte cover, which again, if you're not looking at things side by side, the gloss isn't something that's going to stand out to you unless you're looking at it. Same with the weight of the paper, the thickness of the paper. You're going to have to get the calipers out to determine that. So I'm not sure if it's a first or second printing there. These other ones were a little easier. This is a 6th printing just based on the price itself of $2.50, and then a $2.95 price tag for this 7th printing. So I mean, either way, first or second printing, it's great to get the really early stuff for some of these books, and Zap Comics is one of those books for me. Really nice to get the early stuff when you can. It's just you don't find it, and stuff like Zap Comics. Obviously, people know the title, people know Crumb, so they charge appropriately. A 75-cent cover on issue number 4, a 4th printing of Zap number 4, versus a $2.95 for an 8th printing. Yeah, and it's funny, J Rock says, I noticed that with Megaton first issue, it's shorter than all the rest. And that's something that you really do find, or that I've noticed with the Undergrounds. That's a huge thing that happens quite a bit, is the height of the book. They're really, some books, they really, even if they are the same printing, they're getting cut improperly. So the heights are different. And again, it depends on the book. It depends on who was putting it out, how much money they had. So another one that's ruined by a price sticker right on top of the book, which I don't understand. Comics Unlimited, how the hell are you? Nice to see you. I don't understand why you'd want to do that. 5th printing there. $2.95, 6th printing. Pretty much coming to the end. I don't think there's any more anomalies as far as this goes. Issue number 7, 75 cents. 2nd printing and 5th. And again, as I was saying earlier, for those of you just kind of jumping in now, going down this road especially for undergrounds. That's the one thing to look for right away. 50-cent cover or a 75-cent cover versus $1.25 or $2. You're looking for stuff that has uh, cheaper cover price. The cheaper the better. And again, just because it says 50 cents doesn't mean that it's a first issue. That may be, like we talked about before, where it gets into some differences. Zap number 9, a second printing with $1.50 written over there. And then a fourth printing with $2.95 written. Otherwise, the same book. And it looks like finally here, second printing of Zap number 10 with a $2.50 price tag versus a third printing of a $2.95 price tag. So there you go. I'm sure that was riveting viewing for you. Hopefully the video quality kind of made it through the way. Again, I know that that's not going to be something that's going to appeal to a lot of people, but I thought it would be good to tackle it now since I had all the books out anyway during the reorganization process. So I hope you got something out of that. If you are into getting into Underground Comix, you can't go wrong. Again, trust me, I'm not getting any kickbacks for it. You can't go wrong with Fogel's Price Guide, really, just for that information. If you can't find a copy, go to Comics Joint, but understand that the Comics Joint info isn't going to be as up to date as this. I don't know if he keeps updating the website or not. I know that it's been a number of years now where there's been a promise of alternative comics or indie comics when it kind of made the transition into things like 8 Ball and Hate and on all these other books. They were going to have a separate set of pages for that era, 90s Underground Comics, and that still hasn't come to pass. But if you do enter the world of undergrounds, they're dirt cheap when you can find them if you do some digging. Don't get caught. Early on, I got caught a couple of times, especially now that I'm going back through it. I'm looking at some of the, because I always write down what I paid for it on the back. I am noticing that early on I did buy a couple that it's like, well, I probably could have got that for $5 less, you know, or that was easily a $3 book as opposed to a $10 book. You know what I mean? Not too bad. Not like I paid $50 for anything when it was a $5 book. Nothing that drastic. But just know it's out there and know that you can find deals. And ultimately, for me, it doesn't matter what printing I have as long as I have a copy of the book. It's the same with grading. I'm not as worried about getting something that looks like it's fresh off the rack and it's a first printing. I just want copies of the books. I just really like the books. It's just this collecting these other printings of these books. It's just started to happen because I'm seeing so many of them, because I'm going out looking for undergrounds. I'm just seeing a lot of books, and it's just been a good opportunity to kind of have some of those examples in my collection, which I do like. Again, it's just having examples of this time in history for a group of books that I really get a kick out of. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to put these away. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and we'll talk to you.